Hello ladies and gentlemen. Before the video starts, I'd like to raise awareness on a friend's GoFundMe. Her family restaurant has been going through some hard times and I thought I could help them by raising awareness for it on my own channel. A link to it will be provided in the description. Please donate any amount of money you want or spread awareness for it however you can. I'm not asking for much, just to give a moment of your time to help them out. Any form of help would be deeply appreciated. Thank you. Now, for those who don't know, or for those who just want a refresher on how stupid this is, the scene where Rey uses the dagger to find the Wayfinder in the Death Star ruins may just be the most badly written scene in the entire movie. It may not be the most offensive or disgusting part, but above every other moment in the movie, it is the highest testament I can think of that the people working on it just did not give a shit. Everyone and their grandparents has recognized this as the most horrifically implemented plot point in the story. It is easily one of the most infamously memed on parts in this entire pile of garbage. At least the second most memed on part. The holes surrounding this are so countless and deep that I can't even begin to process how any of this got past production without JJ Abrams being laughed out of the industry. It is so horrific and badly established it makes Hux being the spy look logical by comparison. Let's not waste any time and get right into it. So Rey and her party arrive at the shore where they find the remains of the second Death Star which they believe holds the Wayfinder that will lead them to Exegol. They wonder how they're gonna start looking for it when Rey comes to a sudden realization involving the dagger. She inspects the handle to find a ruler and pulls it all the way out before holding it up to her face. She then aligns the design of the dagger with the remains of the ruins and perfectly fits it into the dagger shape, and then notices the little needle at the end specifying the throne room as a point of interest, thus deducing that the location of the Wayfinder is somewhere in the throne room. Wow. So, would anyone in the audience like to point out any of the obvious reasons for how this plot twist makes absolutely zero sense? Because I got a few I can mention. First of all, what in the ever-loving fuck is this? How is this here? Why is this here? How the fuck is there still a piece of the second Death Star this big still intact? Do I need to remind you of the explosion that was very clearly shown at the end of episode 6? The station was completely annihilated. There was no visual of any fragments of it surviving at all. It was atomized into dust. There was literally nothing left. That explosion was at the center of the station and so enormous that it could be seen from the surface of Endor. What, are you gonna tell me these pink things are fragments of the station being scattered around? Yeah, I'm sure that's what George Lucas had in mind when he made this movie over 40 years ago. Even if that's the argument you want to go with, those don't look nearly big enough to equate to a piece of the station this massive. Oh sure, it probably survived because it was in a most outer section of the station. Except none of the outer sections of the station were shown to survive that explosion. The throne room should literally not exist anymore, let alone still be in this condition. It exploded into a million pieces, yet a huge chunk of the Death Star just happened to crash on an ocean on a planet? That's not even counting the chunk of it off screen underneath the water. Do you really want people to believe this is even a possibility? You're a lot stupider than you look. Even if you want to be generous and just assume that it's possible for a chunk of the Death Star this big to survive that explosion, it should not be here after all this time. How would it even land on this specific moon on Endor? It should have landed on the place that was shown to be right next to it in episode 6. And even if you're willing to believe it would drift out here instead of on Endor, it should still be destroyed by recognition. Maybe you don't know this, but when a really large object enters the atmosphere of a planet, it goes through something called atmospheric drag. Surely the people behind this science fiction movie understand the basic science of this sort of thing, right? The object would burn up and break apart from friction as it falls and picks up speed from the increase in gravity. We see this happening all the time in movies about preventing an asteroid from destroying the Earth. The wreckage would be in pieces by the time it lands, and that's assuming it doesn't scatter upon impact. It should also create a massive crater considering its size, but I guess the people behind this movie just assumed that having it land in the water would cancel that out. The Death Star fragment containing the throne room should not look this neat and tidy or even in one piece. It should have been crumbled and grounded into dust. Even if a piece of the station survived the explosion, the throne room itself should not be intact, because there's dozens upon dozens of things that would happen over the years that would cause it to misalign with the dagger. There's already the atmospheric drag and the damage it would undergo upon crashing with the ocean, but it doesn't even end there. Because another thing we have to take into account is how this wreckage would be 32 years old since episode 6. The wreckage landed in the ocean, and it was in this exact position for 32 years. Hey, people behind this science fiction movie, you wanna know another scientific fact that you stupid fucks left out? Things erode. Things erode. They do not stay in a perfectly neat and tidy condition like this if exposed to wind and water for an extended period of time. The earthly material is worn out and transported from exposure to the elements. And these waves are not tiny little splashes. They are well over 100 feet tidal waves constantly colliding with the wreckage. The wreckage would already be weakened and collapsing from the explosion, atmospheric drag, and impact with the shoreline. There is no way in hell it's gonna stay standing like this if constantly being impacted by the water like this. There is no way that this perfect bit of the wreckage that the dagger points to would stay in place. And even putting aside the constant force of the water, the shoreline they're standing on is severely eroded. The environment surrounding the wreckage would not support it and cause it to wither and decay. Hell, we're not even considering any storms or severe weather conditions that would affect the structure. 32 years of being assaulted by these waters, and there was never a storm or severe weather day that would damage it more? By this logic, they were able to perfectly predict the condition the wreckage would be in after 32 years, and somehow built the dagger around that. It's scientifically impossible. They are absolutely lucky that nothing happened differently that would have caused them to not be able to use it. And that's before factoring in the scavengers. Rey was introduced as a scavenger of Imperial Rex at the beginning of The Force Awakens. So we know for a fact that there are people looting the remains of the Empire for money and goods. Wouldn't somebody assume that there would be some valuable things in the Death Star debris? I mean, it was only a moon-sized space station with a giant laser capable of destroying an entire planet. Shouldn't there be like a shitload of people in the area searching for this and ripping it apart for the spoils? It's not like it was a secret where the debris was. You could practically see it from orbit. Scavengers would be all over this thing. 32 years and no one ever thought to plunder this place in spite of all the valuable resources inside. That is contrived as hell. No way would that much of the Death Star still be intact after that explosion, or burning up in the atmosphere, or crashing on the surface, or the erosion from the exposure to wind and water, or the people who should have scavenged this place for resources. And honestly, forget the wreckage. The Wayfinder should not be here with all the crazy stuff surrounding this place. It's just perfectly sitting there next to the throne room. With all the crazy stuff we just went over, it should have been knocked around the room like a soccer ball, not in this perfectly stationary position. You're telling me that the throne room and the Wayfinder survived after experiencing the heat of 1,000 atom bombs, being exposed to the vacuum of space, burning up while entering the planet's atmosphere, and crashing into the ground in what would most likely be a flaming ball of death on top of the erosion thing. There's so many ways in which this dagger should be rendered useless by now because of all the fucked up shit that would have happened to the wreckage between the events of episode 6 and this movie. And yet, this worked perfectly. Like it wasn't even a centimeter off. I've seen a lot of people talking about how this dagger is an ancient artifact that predates a lot of stuff in the old Empire, including the Death Star itself, but let's try to factor that out. Even if the dagger isn't an ancient artifact, it was still made before Rey's parents sold her into slavery, before Ochi was contacted to capture them, and it would still have to be based around the formation of the wreckage. Was he really just expected to go there and figure out how to find the Wayfinder? Did he know about the erosion that would make it so the outline of the wreckage wouldn't match the dagger? The throne room wasn't even like other areas in the Death Star. It was a tower, yet Rey is shown to be standing upright on it. This means that the tower is still standing at an angle, so the argument that it could look like this due to a collapse doesn't even make sense. The wreckage isn't even shaped like a tower. It's well over the station and we see a TIE fighter for size comparison. It might be that the tower fell in a perfect way that it would be between two parts of the wreck, but that wouldn't work because it's facing outward from the station. The explosion was also from the inside, so the tower would have had its support structure shattered open. And even if the tower survived, it would have flown out into space and burned up. Instead, it stays intact with the rest of the wreckage, survives re-entry, falls at a perfect angle and speed, and fits perfectly into that hull. It never collapsed due to high-speed re-entry, and it never fell into the water. Look at the wreck. Does anyone see a tower? I don't. All I see is a solid chunk of the hull. A thin, unarmored, very aerodynamic observation tower survived the explosion, the entry of the atmosphere, and somehow slowed down, landing on the one piece of the wreckage that caught it, and it just stayed there, perfectly, not moving in that climate, perfectly intact and preserved for 32 years. There's no visual of the tower, meaning that it had to fall into the hull. It's very simple science even for Star Wars. This is not possible. Even calling it a fantasy movie doesn't justify this. The franchise still has our laws of physics, and it also has preset laws of its own. It's absolutely world-breaking that this wreckage still perfectly fits the formation of the dagger after all this time. Imagine being the person who crafted the dagger to begin with. He took a photo of the wreckage from this angle, then went to his workshop and used that photo to trace and cut a piece of metal to match the wreckage profile. Then he sharpened it into a dagger and put a pommel on it that points to the place on the wreckage where the Wayfinder can be found. Then he thought that just in case other Sith needed to get the Wayfinder, that they could just go up to the wreckage and hope that it hasn't shifted, cracked, eroded, or tipped in a sea storm after all these years. That has to be the most stressful job in history. Making a dagger that would perfectly match the appearance of the runes after over 3 decades. This isn't a plot hole. This is a black hole of cohesive writing. Why would a Sith even need a dagger to show him how to get back to a place he came from? That's like writing your home address on a kitchen knife because you're too stupid to remember where you live. There is no logical reason for this. The real reason this is happening is because JJ wanted to do a scavenger hunt in the movie and this was the best idea he could come up with. You're gonna tell me that Palpatine planned so far in advance that he would know the exact shape of the debris after 32 years, yet never did anything to prevent being betrayed by Darth Vader? What a fucking load. And you'd think all that would be horrible enough. But, if you can possibly comprehend it, none of these things are even the most convoluted element of this plot point. Because here's what really gets me. The wreckage aligned with the dagger because Rey had to be standing at a specific point while holding the dagger at a specific distance away from her face. In order for this to even work, the person with the dagger needed to be standing at one specific part of the hill, at this specific height, looking at the wreckage from this specific angle, holding up the dagger in one specific way, with the knowledge that any number of things should have happened that would cause the wreckage to misalign and render this method of finding the Wayfinder completely worthless.
What?
I cannot even begin to form the correct combination of words that can perfectly describe how offensive and putrid this is. I don't think the entire runtime of Velma is as batshit insane as this mere couple of seconds of Rey performing the most out-of-pocket stroke of luck in the history of the universe in order to move the plot of this movie forward. Do you have any idea how much precision goes into this? The dagger was designed to only align with the Death Star runes from this exact angle, from this exact height, from this exact distance. And Rey is standing right in the one spot that you need to be standing at in order for this to work. And she's holding the dagger up in the one exact position to make it align properly. Imagine if they approached the shore from a different angle or a different side of the hill. Or if they stopped too close or too far away from the wreckage. They would have had no way of knowing where to look and everyone would have been screwed. I mean, clearly they wouldn't be able to search through the entire wreckage with the remaining time, so they needed to come up with something to help them pinpoint the location of the device. But this was the absolute worst way they could have done it. How did Palpatine even explain this to his minion? Alright, you will go and find my son and granddaughter and bring them to me. But wait, let me give you a dagger that leads to a device hidden in the 32-year-old wreckage of the Death Star, which you have to hold at a specific angle while being in a specific position which I will not tell you, and align the anciently crafted edge of the blade with the outline of the 32-year-old wreckage, which will lead you to another device which leads here, even though you kind of already know where this is. Oh, and be sure to pray that nothing happens that would cause the wreckage to no longer align with the dagger like erosion or scavengers. Yes, my plans are amazing. If he really just wanted Rey to go to Exegol so badly, there should have been a simpler method. Why didn't he just write it down on a map with an X marking the spot? That would have been less convoluted. Hell, it would have been more believable if the dagger had the soul of a Sith Lord manipulating Rey to find the Wayfinder in the wreckage. Both of these things would have been better than this absolutely brain-dead, mentally impaired excuse for a plot point. If this was a solution to a puzzle in a video game, everyone would have to Google it because of how convoluted it is. It is complete and utter nonsense. If they had been standing like a few feet to the left, they would have completely missed it. It's like the characters themselves have the power to manipulate the plot in their favor at this point. Honestly, I'm willing to bet that this is just another one of Rey's special abilities that they keep adding to her pile of powers that she just mastered for no reason. Luck is one of her force powers now. You cannot look at this with a straight face and not convince me that she wasn't channeling the power of the Master Chief and Experiment 113 in order to be standing in the one spot that she needed to be standing on for this to work. You know what? Rey should have just put the dagger on the ground and spin it like a bottle. With the luck she clearly has, it'll probably just point to the exact direction of the throne room anyway. And while we're on the subject, when exactly did you get the bright idea there could be a connection between the dagger and the ruins? There was no foreshadowing in the movie that this could be a thing, and you never speculated on the dagger's connection to the wreckage up to that point. Now all of a sudden you're like, hey, wait a minute, maybe there's a connection between the dagger and the ruins. And you're only now finding out that there's a ruler thing you have to pull out of the handle in order to pinpoint where the throne room is? Seriously, you didn't even struggle to come to this conclusion. You're only doing this now because it's the most convenient moment in the story for you to do so. Why didn't you think to look for the ruler thing at any earlier time while the dagger was in your possession? Why didn't you notice it when you first found the dagger while underneath the sand? Why did you never notice this ruler thing before now? From the looks of it, it wasn't even super hard to figure out. Anyone with half a brain would know how to use this thing. You just pull out the secret ruler and hold it up to the wreckage. Rey never struggled or had a hard time putting this together. She just automatically knew there was a ruler thing to pull out and the exact distance she had to hold the dagger up from her eyes. This just makes Palpatine look like the biggest retard in villainy because there was zero difficulty in solving this puzzle for the heroes. They didn't find the correct location and angle by solving an advanced riddle or completing some sort of challenge. They just happened to be standing at the right spot through pure dumb luck. And Rey figures out the dagger thing by crazy intuition. I'm sorry, I just can't let this go. This required the gang to be at the exact place, exact distance from the debris, and exact angle they were facing this from in the movie for this to work. If they were just 1 foot to the side, they would have shrugged and gone home. Oh, and they also had to hack into C-3PO's brain so he could translate the text on the dagger, because that wasn't enough of a plot convenience. Maybe Palpatine wanted the information to be there while not being easily accessible to everyone, but the Sith language that told them where to go already served that purpose. There was absolutely no reason for him to do this random geometry bullshit. How did this even represent his character of being a master planner who likes to play mind games with the heroes? It's literally just holding a dagger up to the right spot. It's not like this would even be enough to stop anyone who was already this far towards finding him. This just kills me. There were already so many reasons why this shouldn't have happened exactly as it did. And now we have to top it off with this unfathomable stroke of luck. Not only do you have to worry about a piece of the Death Star this big surviving this gargantuan explosion, not only do you have to worry about it retaining this form while drifting through space, not only do you have to worry about it landing in this specific place, not only do you have to worry about it not burning to a crisp and breaking apart while falling into the atmosphere, not only do you have to worry about it surviving crashing into the surface with the force of a megaton bomb, not only do you have to worry about it not decaying from erosion over the course of 32 years, not only do you have to worry about scavengers deciding not to loot this place for resources and taking the Wayfinder for themselves, and not only do you have to worry about someone figuring out that you have to use the dagger in a specific way to know where to look for it, but now you have to worry about standing on the one precise spot on this hill where the alignment of the dagger is even possible. And the person with the dagger also has to be a specific height. And all of that just falls into their laps like a dog begging for a bone.
Hallelujah! Holy shit! Where's the Tylenol?
Wow. Fucking amazing. I thought the discovery of the Crucible in Mass Effect 3 was bad, but this is by far the worst example of plot convenience ever conceived. It's not even an original idea. They literally just stole this from the Goonies.
The lighthouse, the rock, and the restaurant all fit the doubloon.
Everything about this bullshit excuse for a scene is just a middle finger to anyone with functioning brain cells. A scene this bad shouldn't even be possible, let alone in a Star Wars movie. It shouldn't exist. The sheer amount of contempt that JJ Abrams has for his audience is astronomical. There is absolutely zero excuse for this except the people who wrote this movie are the stupidest fucks on the planet who have never watched a movie in their lives. And if all this still doesn't convince you, here's an excerpt from the Rise of Skywalker's visual dictionary where the author comments on this plot point. The eruption of the Death Star's reactor core upturned local physics as titanic explosive energies were shunned into hyperspace. The result was that the populated moons of Endor were spared the worst of the debris fallout. No sentient beings on Kefber's surface witnessed the Death Star's wreckage crash into the ocean, for the moon had no intelligent life forms. No scientists recorded the resulting impact, or could explain what variables prevented such a catastrophic event from simply obliterating all life on the moon. It would just be one of the many mysteries the Death Star would take to its grave. Those last two sentences are literally the author admitting to the fact that this doesn't make a lick of sense. If that doesn't convince you this movie is objectively bad, I don't know what will. And if you think this is all just annoying nitpicking and I'm making a big deal out of nothing, then you clearly have not been paying attention to what I've been saying throughout this video. This scene is not a nitpick. It's not some little thing that can be easily ignored or hand-waved away. It is crucial to the movie. It's an important plot point that Rey uses this dagger to find the Wayfinder. The film cannot function without this being here. You can't make an argument for otherwise because the writers and directors clearly didn't think so. They left this in the movie because it's their way of saying that in order to proceed, we need to have this situation happen. This scene, that is absolutely crucial for the rest of the story to happen, is only made possible by the insane idea that a chunk of the Death Star this big survived this explosion, didn't break apart when falling into this planet's atmosphere, and never gave into erosion for the 32 years it was washed up on this shore, specifically so it can align with the design of this dagger. If you don't think this is absolutely ridiculous, then go ahead. Prove me wrong. Go to the Museum of Science, show them this scene, and make a compelling argument for how it makes sense. sense. Let me save you the trouble. You can't. You can't do it. It's impossible. There's no way. You would not have a snowball's chance of convincing anyone that this would be possible. You would be laughed out of that building in a matter of seconds and go down in history as the biggest embarrassment in the field of science. Like, I'm not even trying to be angry right now. I'm just trying to wrap my head around how this is even possible. Like, this level of storytelling is so horrific, I can't even imagine it being done on purpose. It feels like a subconscious level of incompetent writing. If they wanted to make this more believable, then Palpatine's fleet would have wiped out maybe 20% of the free worlds before they figured out what they were supposed to do here. You don't need to have more than 2 functioning brain cells to understand why this movie is so horrific. It doesn't obey even the most fundamental basics of plot development and believable world building on top of the characters being obnoxious and wasted. How do you even define how much of a failure this movie is? What fucking moron would think anyone would be able to follow anything that happens in this movie, much less have the patience to even try? I honestly don't know what else to say here. I have never seen something this incomprehensible before. This really is the worst writing I have ever seen in the history of fiction. And really think about what that means, because I said earlier that this isn't even the most offensive part of the movie, if you can believe that. This movie is just unbelievable. It truly does just get worse and worse the further we get in. It's like a constant assault on your brain that never ends. I think I'm gonna be dead by the time this review is over.